Hello and welcome to Community Part 3, the how-tos of creating a class that feels like, what? Feels like home. Like the manna that God faithfully provided for the Israelites in the wilderness, He faithfully provided the daily guidance that would literally lead me one step at a time toward creating that home that Peck discovered at his Quaker school. Right away, God showed me how to create a system of leadership in each group. I dubbed them my task masters, although I soon changed the name to task managers. And over the years, as I have expanded their roles with my new and upgraded ideas, they have become an indispensable element of not only the community aspect of our class, but also of my classroom management strategies as well. Honestly, I cannot imagine life without my task managers. Essentially, each task manager is a mini teacher, so to speak. Whereas I'm in charge of the whole class, with community, you have one very responsible person who is responsible for 3 or 4 students. A truly committed task manager can literally turn a peer's life around. I love telling the story of Daniel, an 8th grade boy with learning issues, who without Jasmine, his truly committed task manager, would probably, very likely, never have graduated. Once in a while, with cases like Daniel, I have a student who is so well fitted with their task manager that I allow them to stay with that task manager all year. Such was the case with Daniel, who begged me at the end of the first quarter to be allowed to stay with Jasmine, who was equally insistent on continuing their partnership. So, what made Jasmine the ultimate task manager? That's what I'm going to clarify for the remainder of today's video, because without committed task managers, I cannot imagine community working for the 5th through 8th grade students that I have worked with all these years. So how do I pick my task managers? Well, this is how it works. For the first 3 weeks of the school year, I am watching closely for students who seem like they would be prime candidates. On the last Friday of that 3rd week of school, I display the qualifications for a task manager on the screen, and I describe in depth the importance of being a task manager. In the back of my SEL poster, my poster book, I have included an activity called What Makes a Great Task Manager. Before I begin to read the list one item at a time, I tell my students that if they can answer each item with an emphatic yes, then they definitely need to consider being a task manager. I stress that only 6 or 7 will be chosen, and that if they don't get picked first quarter, the chances are great they'll have the opportunity second quarter. I tell them in advance, too, that every year I have a couple of task managers from first quarter who will be so awesome that they'll be a task manager all year. Thus far, I've never had one single student who resented that policy, because as the year progresses, they see with their own eyes what a difference those committed task managers are making. In fact, I always have students ask me, beg me, privately, if they can be with a particular task manager the next quarter, because they know that that task manager is so wonderful and helpful. The last thing I do before I begin talking about the qualifications on the screen is to tell my students that after I finish sharing the list, I will send around a piece of paper, and if they know they can answer every single question with a resounding yes, and if they are willing to commit to the role of task manager, they are to sign their name on the paper. In all my years of choosing those first task managers, I've always had about 16 or 17, more than the 6 or 7, sign the list, which is, of course, bittersweet because I'm thrilled that so many of my students want to be chosen, but I know that many will be disappointed. That really breaks my heart. I'm like the coach who knows that she can only have so many players on the team and has to make that gut-wrenching cut. That night, I take the list home, pray over it, and make my choices. The next day, after profusely thanking every single one who signed the list, I make my big announcement. It's a time of intense excitement. Now I'm going to backtrack here and tell you about the list of qualifications to be a task manager. Number 1 on the list is that they must love to help others. It's by far and away the most important qualification, number 1. Without a strong desire to help kids in their group, they absolutely cannot be a task manager. I talk most about this qualification. I tell the story of Daniel and Jasmine. Every year I tell that story. I explain how the task manager is like a teacher, except that they're a teacher with their own peers, with a small group instead of a whole class. I ask them to imagine having a teacher who doesn't love to help her students, how they'd never want to be in that teacher's class. Another qualification, number 2, is that they have to be patient. They will have challenges in their group, and they will have to deal with them patiently. I tell them that being patient is very emotionally intelligent, because being a task manager is so much about being smart about their own feelings and the feelings of their group members. Along with that, number 3, a task manager has to be a respectful role model who helps their team get to know each other and feel safe. And very importantly, number 4, a task manager has a responsibility of always knowing exactly what the teacher has assigned for the class to be working on. They have to understand the assignment, or they have to ask for clarification if necessary. And then number 5, or is it 6, I'm not sure, they have to make sure that everyone in their group is on task. I'm going to go more into that, how that works in the next video, because I bet you're wondering how in the world a student is able to keep one of his or her peers on task, which is, of course, one of the greatest challenges of the teacher. But just think for a moment of that. Individual task managers helping the individual students in their group. You can see how that would minimize the work of the teacher and maximize the amount of help being delivered. Number 6, another qualification is that the task manager has to work closely with the teacher. When they have a problem, a concern, or a challenge, they have to ask for help. Well, first they have to try to solve the problem themselves, of course. But then when it's obvious that what they're doing isn't working, their immediate move must be to ask the teacher. Almost in every case all these years, I've always known when a task manager needs help. And sometimes I'll just ask them if they need me, but I encourage them to ask. I try not to interfere with a task manager's efforts, but obviously there are always uncooperative students who refuse to listen to their task manager. I'll tell you more about that later. A further, number 7, very important qualification is that a task manager must be 100% committed to being the best task manager in the world that they can possibly be, just like every teacher has to be that committed. They must know how important their job is, and they must be wholeheartedly, number 8, committed to reaching community. They have to be willing to be routinely evaluated by their group members. In my SEL poster book, I included a task manager evaluation form right in here. An evaluation form where students can safely express their task manager's progress. A task manager who is truly committed to being their best welcomes these evaluations. A task manager must take these evaluations very seriously and be willing to change if the general consensus calls for it. Often students judge their task manager by the performance of other task managers. Maybe they see that another task manager is doing a better job at helping their group, for example, to stay on task. Or maybe another task manager is more patient. The idea isn't that they harshly criticize their task manager. It's that they gently and respectfully help their task manager get better at their job. A final critical requirement for the task manager is to help the group, this is a big one, to peacefully solve conflicts without my interference. Until you see it for yourself, you cannot appreciate experiencing the joy of watching kids work out their own problems by themselves. It's impossible to underestimate the importance of teaching our students to solve their own conflicts using emotional intelligence instead of arguing and fighting. In an upcoming video, I'll tell you the story of a group that was unable to solve its conflicts and wanted desperately to disband. It's so beautiful that it deserves its own video. I'm sure you'll agree that these qualifications are very high, but I can assure you that with all my help and training, I've experienced the supreme joy of working with several hundred extraordinary young people who have successfully incorporated the components, that is, the discs of the backbone of a true community, and have as a result led their group to the 7th and final disc, feeling like a family. In truth, to each member of that group, they feel like they are at home at school. You see, that's ultimately what my task managers do. They help me answer God's prayer of creating a place that feels like home. Caring communities. They teach young people how to work together despite their differences, how to respect each other, how to treat each other as they themselves want to be treated. What if we could do that in every school in America? One classroom at a time, one dedicated teacher at a time. We must each work to make the world a better place for the children. Community is the answer to the problems of the world today. Until next time, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.